I don't know why I have the ceiling fan on. Because now I'm cold. I was hot. Now I'm cold. Georgia. Welcome to Wonderland. It's Ari here, and today's video is all about books before BookTube. This is actually a segment I did on one of my previous live shows on Instagram, but I kind of wanted to put it out here on my BookTube channel, so I'm doing it. So these are books that I have read and loved and discovered before BookTube. Growing up, already it's kind of hard to see myself in YA books as a YA character because I am a black and queer girl. So I didn't really discover these books when I was growing up. My family, my parents, they are really big on black history. So all the books I had growing up were black history books. You know, Malcolm X, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks. You get the gist. Just all the historical black figures and their stories and their tales, and written in different types of ways to make it appealing to children. I am pretty sure all of y'all remember the movie My Friend Martin. If you are a young black kid, everyone remembers that movie. But to read YA and venture out into other books, I was a library kid. I went to the library all the time. The library was my best friend, whether it was my school library or my neighborhood library. I checked out all of my books and read them through the library and loved them, and unfortunately had to give them back. I was also a person who wanted to build my own library at home, but during my early days as a child and my early teen years, it was hard to go to the bookstore. My family did not buy me books like that. And on the rare occasions that I did get money, I did have to save it and plan and really be specific and choosy on books that I wanted to buy from the bookstore. I didn't go to the bookstore that often either. I went maybe like once a month, or if I was lucky, but really maybe twice or three times a year where I go to the bookstore and I buy books. And so yeah, saying this out loud sounds like a really sad book childhood, but it's okay. I did discover books and I did get into the YA genre closer to my high school years, which is when I really loved it. I in my eighth middle school years, close to my high school years, but I was not active on BookTube. I didn't even know BookTube existed. I didn't have any social medias, no Twitter, no Instagram, no MySpace, no Snapchat, no Facebook, no nothing. So I was pretty like in the dark, in the closet, just everything about books and YA. So these are books that I read and loved before I got into BookTube. Now, three of these books I did discover. Technically, they are part of BookTube because my very first BookTube channel and blog that I discovered was Epic Reads. And all of y'all know that is a part of Harper Teen, Harper Collins Publishing. So these three books I technically found out through BookTube, but at the same time, this was before I got into Twitter, Instagram, all and BookTube channels and subscribers, and all the BookTubers who I follow and love today. This was before them. So this was a very long intro, but let's get into it. Now, the first I want to recommend is actually also really an author recommendation. I discovered Alex Flynn, specifically Beastly and Cloaked. These are the only two physical copies that I have. Some of her other books I've read as ebooks, like the Bewitched or Bewitching. I think that's the name of it. I read that as the ebook, and all her other books or all her other fairy tale retellings I read as library books. So I did not have them. But these are the two books that I have spent my money on, and fortunately enough, I got them at school book fairs. The first book I read actually was Beastly, and it became my favorite so much that I reread it, and you can tell because it's in horrible condition. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know, look at the spine. A lot of book nerds out there, you're probably cringing like, oh my God, what did you do? I reread the book. Again, I didn't have that many books at my home all the time, so I reread books a lot. But I loved Beastly. I mainly picked it up because this was around the time the movie was coming out, and I was so interested in the movie, and then I found out it was a book, so I went to read the book before I went to see the movie. And so I read it, and I loved it. This lovely movie tie-in edition cover. And I discovered she wrote other fairy tale retellings, so I also picked up Cloaked. I can't remember a lot about what this book is about. It's actually a mixture of a couple of fairy tales retold in here that I can't really entirely remember. It's been a while. another book that's in slightly horrible condition. I'm sorry. But I loved all of her books, and I've only read all of her retellings. Any other books that she's read, I'm pretty sure they're good, but I haven't picked them up. But she really got me into retellings and the retelling genre as far as books and YA. So thank you, Alex Flynn. The next book I have, I'm sorry, it's another book in terrible condition, but it is The Iron King by Julie Kagawa. This was my very first intense, in-depth YA fantasy series. Oh my God. Okay. This was the very first YA series that I really got into, that I really became a fan of, that I loved and just stuck with to the bittersweet end. And I just love this book. This book, again, is another book, horrible condition. The cover is practically falling off, and you could tell this was a long time ago because it was back in that time where I used to write my name in my books. Again, I didn't have that many books. I wanted to keep track of them. If anyone found them, I wanted them to return it to me. But this is actually inspired by Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare, which is one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. This is about a girl whose little brother is replaced with a changeling, and she is like freaking out, and she discovers that he was taken by fairies. So she goes into the fairy realm to find her brother, and it turns out she is half fae herself. This is a really awesome series. Julie Kagawa is an amazing writer. I fell in love with the series. You know how everyone was obsessing and loving over Twilight? This was my Twilight. I was obsessing and loving this book. I got 3 of my friends to read this book, and we all, basically like picked our teams, Team Puck or Team Ash. If you read the book, and we made our ships, and we were just obsessing over the book, and I loved it so much. This really plunged me into YA. And fun story, I was not supposed to have this book. One of those few chances where I had to save money to buy a book. I was out with my mom, and we were doing some grocery shopping, but a friend's birthday, she was having a sleepover, and I had to get her a birthday gift. And being the book nerdish person that I am, I wanted to get her a book for her birthday. So my mom was going through all the books back in Walmart to figure out which books to get her, and I was looking as well, but mainly for myself. And I picked up Witch and Wizard by James Patterson, and I bought that for myself. And then I picked up this book and just handed it to my mom. I said, get her this book so we could get out of here and get ready for the sleepover. But in the backseat of the car, while I'm putting the gift together, I'm looking at the cover, and I read the back of the book. I was like, huh. I read the first 10 pages, and I was like, okay, no, this book needs to be mine. F James Patterson. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So I went and I switched the books. I put the James Patterson book in the gift bag, and I kept this for myself. But it turned out to be okay because my friend turned out to be a huge James Patterson fan. I figured this out at her birthday party when she opened the gift in front of me. She screamed and like blew everyone's eardrums out because she's always wanted Witch and Wizard. And apparently I gave her the best birthday gift ever that year. So it worked out for both of us. Funny story, but I remember it every time I pick up this book because that is how this book was brought into my life. Next, I want to bring up is another YA type-esque, fantasy-esque book series that I was so into. When I got into BookTube, I learned that a lot of people did not like this book. When I got into Goodreads, I also figured out that there was mixed reviews on this book. But back when I read it, I loved it. I feel like now that I'm older, I probably won't feel the same as I did when I read it the first time. But it's my opinion, and I'm going to stick with it. And that book is Fallen by Lauren Kate, the entire Fallen series. I don't want to say too much about this book, but angels. So I'm going to say angels. Okay. This was back when angels was like a huge thing, but I didn't know it was a huge thing. The only 2 angel book series that I read from YA was this book and Unearthly by Cynthia Hand. Those are my 2 books. And again, got friends into it. But I didn't know that was a thing that was happening in YA back then. Now that I know, I feel so like, wow. But I love this book. And it has some mixed reviews, but I liked it. I had feelings over it. And I had the other several books. Unfortunately, I lent them to friends who never gave them back. So now I'm only stuck with the first book. Would I like the rest of the series to complete the collection? Yes. And surprisingly, it's in really good condition considering that I reread this book a lot too. back when I was younger. And I remember buying this book because I first discovered it around the time when Michelle Obama was first lady. I was also a Girl Scout. This was my middle school years. So this was probably in 2008, 2009 when I discovered this book. I know I'm dating myself, but still. That's just how I remember because she had this huge Girl Scout thing up in DC. And I remember taking this and the second book, Torment, with me on that Girl Scout trip. It was over the weekend. And I read both books in that 3-day weekend. So yeah, like I love this book, okay? I loved it. The next book is actually my first Lauren Oliver book, and that is Delirium. I haven't finished this series. I probably won't finish this series. I know. I'm so sorry. But this is my very first Lauren Oliver book. After this, I read Before I Fall, and I read a couple of her other books. I haven't read her latest releases, which is Replica and Gemina, or I don't know. I haven't read any of her latest books or her newer books, but I read this and Before I Fall, and I remember loving them. This was a series I couldn't entirely get into, especially since it is a dystopian series, and this is, again, was around the dystopian fad, and I didn't even know because I did read Hunger Games, Divergent, Maze Runner, all those around the time I was reading this book, and I never finished any of those series. It took me forever to finish Hunger Games, and it took me forever to finish Divergent. I still haven't finished Maze Runner. I am so sorry. But I never finished this series either. And it was pretty cool, I guess. It was about, love being a disease, and you had to get a vaccination, and this girl ends up falling in love with this dude, and stuff happens. That's all I remember, and that's all I care to remember, okay? My first Lauren Oliver book before BookTube. And then next, I have my three epic reads recommendations around the time when I was starting to get into BookTube, but still, this was before BookTube. I'm sorry, I'm counting it. Sue me if you got a problem. The first book is The Madman's Daughter by Megan Shepherd, another book that I reread the hell out of because you see this horrible condition cover, and I know this might blind some of you, so luckily I rebought another copy. I rebought another copy, a better, a newer, glorious looking copy. I loved this trilogy. I loved it. Again, I love retellings and I love classics. I read classics when I was younger. I was very nerdy and smart kid, okay? But this is a retelling of The Island of Dr. Moreau. This stars his daughter, Juliet Moreau. She is living and she is thinking her father is dead because he was disgraced and shunned in the scientific world in London. I think that's where this takes place in. But then she finds out he's alive and he's been living on this island experimenting on animals. A retelling of the Island of Dr. Moreau. The second book is a retelling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and the third book is a retelling of Frankenstein. It is a trilogy, so read them in that order, so you can know what happens. But I love the series, and I love Megan Shepherd. Her series, The Cage, did disappoint me. I did not like it. I did not finish it. But her new book, Grim Lovelies, which come out later this year in 2018, I believe in October, I am looking forward to getting that. But I do plan to reread this, which is why I bought another copy, because this is in shambles. And another sweet little sentiment story to attach to this is I was hospitalized around the time I was going through my depression and when I was diagnosed with severe clinical depression and anxiety. I was hospitalized to get treated and to go through group therapy and all that other stuff. And I couldn't have anything with me. My mom did pack some of my clothes, but I couldn't have my phone. I couldn't have my journal or pencils or pens or a belt or anything. But they did let me keep my book that I was currently reading at the time. And I was currently reading this book and I loved it. And I discovered in the room that I was in, a girl who lived there before me, she actually wrote a motivational thing on the wall. So I stole a pencil and I wrote it in the back of my book. And I looked at it during group therapy sessions because I always had my book with me and they let me keep my book. And I would read it during breaks and stuff like that. And I would turn back to it and it really kept me going. And I know that's ironic. I'm in a hospital and I'm reading about mad people. That's kind of something the doctor should have looked at or flagged or whatever, but it has sentimental value to me, at least this copy, which is why I had to buy another copy because I can't get rid of this, but I feel like if I reread it, this copy it would have fell apart, and I don't want it to do that, so I bought another one. So, The Batman's Daughter. Then next I have Dorothy Must Die, and this, loved it. I loved it. This Dorothy comes back as an evil dictator in Oz. Everyone is evil. The Scarecrow, the Lion, the Tin Man, Glinda. All of our characters are evil and effed up in the head. And this is about our main character, Amy Gum. She gets swept up in a tornado and she lands in Oz, but she's looking around and she's like, "This isn't the Oz from the books and the TV and the movies. This place is horrible. I want to go home. Get me out of here." But a lot of stuff happens, and she finds out in order to save Oz, she has to kill Dorothy. And I love this book. I remember loving this book, and this is my first edition, and surprisingly, it's not in bad condition either. And I remember reading this a lot in my chemistry class in high school. One of my friends, he said, I read such effed up books because people are either mad or dying or killing people or whatever. He made a joke about it, but he asked our chemistry teacher, would he ever read this book? And my chemistry teacher said to us, he looked at the title. He was like, Dorothy Must Die. Well, if she gotta die, she gotta die. He asked him would he ever read this book, and he was like, nah, but she gotta die. She gotta die. And I will forever remember that, because even after doing homework and assignments and tests and quizzes in this class, my teacher actually let me get away with reading this book in his class because he understood that Dorothy had to die. So I love this book, and that's another sentimental story that I attached to this book. And my friends who went to high school with me, yes, they know that my chemistry teacher, he was a really, really crazy person. So it's okay. And then finally is A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. My first Sherlock Holmes retelling. This is Sherlock's descendant, Charlotte, and Watson's descendant, Jamie. And they are at a boarding school, and this murder happens, and they are getting framed for it, so they have to team up and solve the mystery. That's all you really guys need to know. It's a really great series that I want to continue. I haven't picked up any of the other books yet, but I plan to. And the dust jacket, it's in slightly horrible condition on my part. I am sorry. I am so sorry. But I remember loving this book, and I think people should give it a try. And after this book, Epic Reads became my go-to place for book recommendations. And then they started recommending other booktubers, Jessie the Reader, Sasha from A Book Utopia, Reagan, Kat from Catty-tastic or Katie-tastic, and I started watching them for a while, and then I diverged, and I found Cece, I found Haley, I found all my favorite booktubers from today, and yeah. So now these are all the books from before BookTube. I'm trying to show them without dropping them. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Leave a comment down below on what books that you read and loved and discovered before BookTube, and even books that you read and discovered after BookTube. If you want to follow me on social media, all those are linked down below, including the links to my blog and my book club, the Book Wonderland Book Club, and Prideathon, which I am a co-host of now. So I am throwing that out there. I will forever advertise that. Be sure to subscribe so you can get notified when I post new videos, and remember to keep calm and keep reading.